Hello, I'm Kads, and welcome to today's video. Once again, the portal is alight with the lovely purple hue, but it is actually not time to pull some shards. We're going to try and not pull any shards whilst going for our goals in the Champion Chase tournament. We'll get to the exact strategy in a second here, but first let's take a look at the Champion Chase tournament because there are a couple of things to note. So it is a fairly standard one, the one that you would see during a fusion, maxes out at 10k, and we have a lower node for I guess Titan points in this case, where like equivalent of where you would have fragments for a champion or a rare or something around 1500. And then we have unfortunately, the higher one at 5500, which is a bit steep. Normally we just have like the fusion maybe at 2500, and then legendary tome still there at 3000. That's pretty par for the course. So we have the Champion Chase, 5,500 points is the target. Of course, you can skip a total of 250 points across the entirety of the Titan event for the few people that are actually going for it. But dropping or skipping 150 here in like week 1 or maybe week 2, wherever we're at, is a little bit risky. So in my case, I'd like to avoid that possibility, and we're going to try to get all the way out to 5,500. And the reason we're trying to do this without pulling any of the major shards is, as you can see here, we are in Sacred Mercy 5 deep. And we are close to Void Mercy, 30 away or 50 total maximum to guarantee ourselves a Void Legendary. And I don't want to ruin either of those situations because this is great for a Progressive Chance event for a champion that I'd like, and this is great for a Sacred Pogo. So we want to preserve both of those. Ancients are on the table if need be, as we'll get to a little bit later with the exact strategy, because I'm very, very far from Mercy, and so pulling a couple 10 pops might not be that painful to do. Maybe we'll get a Legendary, who knows? Doubtful. But building or getting closer to Mercy there is not the worst thing in the world. So that is an option as a failsafe, but primarily we're going to try to not have to pull any of the major shards. Now, one thing to note is that you can see we're already at 1,000 points, 1,065 to be more exact. And that is because I already pulled 1,000 points worth of mystery shards just to kind of prepare and get a little bit closer. And then I also got 50 points for summoning an Arbalaster for the Broadmaw fusion, which I guess we can transition over to the portal to take a look at that. We can take a moment to look at the shard count, but hopefully, again, we're not going to have to dip into those. So 702 on the Ancients, 180 on the Voids, 8 on the Primals, and 52 on the Sacreds. So the way this is going to work is that I have prepared not 1, not 2, but 3 Broadmaw fusions. So we can see all of the Void rares collected there. So Broadmaw is 350 points per summon, meaning that this is going to give me just over 1,000 points. So we have 3 of those. We also have 7 remnant summons saved up from all of the Curse City that I've done over the past few months. And you can see here that the most likely outcome is getting a non-void epic. So the bare minimum that we could get here is 7 times 250 or 1,750 points. So just under 2,000. Combine those two, we're sitting just under 3,000 on the points. And then you can add in the fragment summon element, where we are going to be summoning Aostrad Dreamsong, the previous fusion champion, because we do want to use her for the Hydra Clan boss. So if we put all of that together, that puts us around 3,300 points. Of course, you add in the 1,000 we've already pulled from mystery shards, and then we'd be somewhere around 4,300 points, about 1,000 short of the second milestone for the Titan event points, which if I truly wanted to not pull any shards for that remainder, I could also just summon any 2 legendaries here from the rest of the fragment summon section. But in my particular case, I am in need of some rares for some food, so I'm happy to pull some Ancients to bridge that 1,000 point gap. Also, we are leaving some room for some potentially great RNG, because of course there is still a chance to get Void Epics, which is 100 more than a non-Void Epic. So this amount of the 1,750 could be slightly higher if we get a Void Epic at all. And of course, there's the measly 2.5% chance that we get a Mythical, which is worth a whopping 1,000 points. So that would be substantial. Again, not expected, but nonetheless, if that were to happen, that would kind of change how we do things. So we're going to do those last. We're going to start off with Aostrad Dreamsong because I do want to use her, like I said, for the Hydra Clan boss. So we start things off with another 500 points, which puts us around 1,500 points. So welcome to the account. Can't wait to build her. I have an idea of how I'm going to build her. Stay tuned for not really a showcase, but just kind of featuring her in a Hydra team in the future. And from there, we move on to the Broadmaws. Unfortunately, this is going to cost 3 million silver because it's 1 million silver per summon. But nonetheless, it is worth it. I would much rather spend silver than spend my precious shards. So this is most certainly worth it. And of course, Broadmaws for me are food champions. I did originally use him in Faction Wars long ago, at least for my first clear and beyond. But of course, he was replaced by the fusion champion of Pythion. So much better champion, or a huge upgrade, I should say, in terms of champions. But nonetheless, I still do use my Broadmaw for the epic Lizardman secret room, so he still gets some play on my account. And of course, in the Cursed City, he might still be useful for any restrictive stage that requires epics that feature Lizardman, Reviver, support, whatever type champions. All right, so with those two out of the way, we should be sitting somewhere around 2,500 points, and we can get into the 7 Remnant Summons and just see what can happen. So we start things off with a Void Epic, and this is Tuhawk the Wanderer, who I've heard amazing things about. I actually have not pulled him yet, so he is new on my account, but he does have this AoE increased speed on himself, and then AoE decreased speed. It is Void, so he cannot weak hit, which is nice. He has a turn meter steal, and can place a stun debuff for 2 turns, which is quite rare of an ability, granted on a 4-turn cooldown, and then on the A1 has a chance of increasing the cooldown of target's random skills, or target skills by 1 turn at random. So it's very popular A1, at least in recent days. I'm not sure what his passive does. Decreases damage. Okay, so he's a little bit more tanky when his health drops. So pretty cool. I've heard good things about him in the Cursed City. I know a couple of content creators are pretty high on him. So maybe he'll come into play in a future iteration of the Cursed City. So we have another epic, I guess, or an epic, who is not non-void, and a Moonbeam. Unfortunately, I guess I should have mentioned it'd be nice, since we're going to get a lot of epics here, it would have been nice to get champions for the Lady Mikage fusion. But End Moonbeam is one of them, but I do already have him, and that's kind of his primary purpose, unfortunately, to say. Another epic, here we go, Ator. And he honestly is one of those champions who I think was definitely built to be more of an enemy wave annoyer type deal, because his passive here, whenever he takes a critical hit, he places counterattack, which slows down your runs. He can also do damage and, potentially kill someone who attacks him. He also has a really annoying, or really weak, but really annoying when it's against you, provoke 2 times at random, 75% chance to land. He's a really terrible champion, to be honest, but nonetheless, he can be quite annoying and kind of perma-provoke you in PvE content. We have Mr. Emo himself, Warden, Dark Elves, who really honestly does need a buff. He is the weak version of decreased attack and the weak version of increased defense. This is literally like a rare ability, so definitely needs some love. Reflect damage on all allies is just not really going to cut it, so Warden, do not build. Next up, we have Defiled Sinner, if not mistaken. Yes, the Karam's brother. I honestly don't know what he does, so let's see. A2 attacks one enemy, then attacks all enemies 50% of their max HP if it kills an enemy, so a little bit of surplus, I guess. AoE attack increases for each enemy alive. I guess that's up to 100%. I don't even know how you would, I guess versus Spider, you'd be able to get 100%. There's not going to be that many enemies in most content, so I guess 40% for like Arena, and then 1 attack. Yeah, I don't know. I haven't heard anything about Defiled Sinner, so I'm gonna put him in the camp of not that great. Aboro, pretty decent Hydra champion from what I've heard. She has potential to land AoE decreased defense on her A1 if the primary target, so whoever she's targeting, is on under 4 or more debuffs. So if you put a bunch of poisons out on a certain head in Hydra, then you can attack that head and she'll be an AoE decreased defense. So that can be fairly reliable. She also has a bunch of buffs on herself, including Perfect Veil, so she can be less susceptible to the head of Torment, and she can also be a pretty decent mischief tank. And then she also has this ability here. She can transfer debuffs from herself to the target. And she does also have this possibility, or she also has this passive of getting Revive on Death on herself whenever she receives a Veil of Perfect Veil, which of course she places with her own abilities. And so once again, she can be a pretty decent mischief tank as well as an AoE debuffer on the A1. Last Remnant Summon. So I guess we got oh my goodness, we got a mythical, the 2.5% procced and 1,000 points for only the Mechanist, who honestly, from what I've heard, he's pretty bottom of the barrel when it comes to the mythical. Okay. You know what? I honestly should not be surprised because of how insane our primal session was, but we actually managed to get a mythical champion. So this is kind of why I left a little bit of room with the Remnant summons, because just in case this actually happened, then we would even have to pull, I guess, less ancient shards. We'll have to check on the champion chase. But yeah, Frolny, what does he actually do? On Form 1, AoE attack increases by 30% if his max HP is higher than each target's, and he is HP based, so that probably won't happen unless they're like a super tank. So maybe that can come into play if you're going against really super tanky supports. Attacks one enemy, steals 2 buffs. This cannot be resisted, and if it's critical, it repeats the attack once. So I guess it's a double hitter if they're not under any debuffs. On the A1, attacks one enemy and will ignore 5% of the target's debuff for each buff on this champion. So that can add up to a substantial amount of ignore defense on the A1, unfortunately, but nonetheless, if you stack him up with a bunch of buffs. And then his passive, this is the one where he starts to increase his he increases his crit damage by 1% for each 1000 HP they have, and then he increases his max HP, kind of like a Rotos, up to 100% chance every time he kills a champion. So if he starts to get some kills, he can really start to snowball, increase his max HP, and increase the damage output because he is HP based on Form 1. Form 2 is where he goes like protector status. I think he has ally protection, on unkillable on himself for 2 turns, so he can be a really, really reliable protector. He has a shield here, so you can just soak up damage and you can't die because you're under unkillable. Attacks one enemy, heals the champion by 50%, and then he balances the HP of all allies. So essentially, if someone is full health, he will bring everyone up to the level of the person with full health. So someone in a regen set, a bolster set, something like that. It can be a really massive heal, and it ignores the heal reduction debuff because it's not a heal, it is a HP balance ability. So just keep that in mind in case you're going against like the head of Decay. And then lastly, on the A1, attacks one enemy 2 times, and each hit will increase his defense by 5%, stacking up to 100%. And I guess I failed to mention that he is defense based on this form. So HP based in Form 1, defense based in Form 2. And then here, when he attacks, he reflects damage back to the attacker. And whenever you land debuffs on him, he starts to reduce your accuracy all the way up to 50%. So the more you hit him, the more likely you are to get resisted over time, which is kind of crazy. HP percentage in all battles on the aura. So is he going to see play on my account? Probably not, but nonetheless, hey, it's another mythical in the bank. I can't really complain. We are up to a grand total of 4, and I'm most certainly out of mythical tomes, so he will probably not see play for a long time, if ever, depending on how that goes. I honestly do kind of want to save the rest of my mythical tomes for when I get Lady Mikage in 3 to 5 years, depending on how things are going, but I digress. So let's check in on the champion chase. I did honestly not expect to get a mythical out of 7 remnant summons, but we should be pretty close to the 5,500. We shouldn't be exactly there, just based on all the math we did earlier. We should be 4,000 or 5. Okay, one epic away, because this is like 200 points. So I could pull like a 10 pop of ancients, or we could do like 10 pops or single pulls until we get there. But I think more likely, or what's probably smarter and safer, just to really cement the shardless session here, is that we can just pull like C's or one of the daily login reward champions. Maybe Lady Arash, doesn't really matter. So we will summon Lady Arash here, and that will give us 250 points for another epic in the bag. And thus we have actually completed successfully a shardless session, and we managed to still get all the way out to 5,500 points in a champion chase. All of my mercies have been preserved, including ancient shards, to my surprise, but nonetheless, this is the goal. So to minimize the amount of damage to the amount of shards that I have, but still manage to achieve the goals here. Obviously, this is not something that is replicable every single time, every time there's a champion chase. I've been saving up all those remnant summons for a long time, a few months now, and this was just the best way to use them. Of course, previous fusions, you can definitely stack those up, which is why I generally speaking do advocate for people to complete fragment summons, because every future champion chase, that's a potential for 500 points or 650 points if it's a void legendary fusion. So I digress, but I do recommend that most people try for most fusions, because they're, even if you don't get any play out of them, at the very, very least, they are worth some points in a future champion chase. All right, so that's going to do it for today's video. We most certainly got way more than we expected from this session, but nonetheless, we did achieve the goal of the shardless champion chase, claiming all of the applicable Titan points. Honestly, I was perfectly happy just having Heirs to Dreamsong, because like I mentioned earlier, I do want to use her on my hard Hydra team, but we will most certainly take the bonus of getting our fourth mythical champion on the account, even though he probably won't see play for a very, very long time, if at all. But beggars cannot be choosers, so I cannot complain here about getting a stroke of good luck my favor. Let me know in the comment section down below if you guys were able to get anything from your summons. Are you participating in the 2x voids, or are you skipping it waiting for the upcoming Wixwell fusion? It's quite rare nowadays that I get to do one of these shardless strategy sessions, so hopefully you guys enjoyed this departure from the norm, and if so, be sure to hit that like button down below. And as always, if you did enjoy the video, then feel free to subscribe to the channel for more content just like this one in the future. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.